This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
To our series on passing the trash, protecting our kids from hidden predators in schools, because there are a lot of classroom cover-ups. Should say more district cover-ups, more administration cover-ups. This is not a teacher problem. This is a administration district problem that doesn't want you to know about their dirty laundry at the expense of the safety of your kids. If you have kids in school, it's time to listen up and pay attention. You're going to want to press subscribe to this. There are more pieces in this series. We're only on number 3. There's 2 more in front of this, in case you're just catching this now, where we're breaking down this systematic problem that we have in our schools in the United States of predatory teachers bouncing from district to district pretty much unchecked. So if you watch the first 2 episodes, you know we're pulling back the curtain on how districts quietly shuffle accused educators to avoid scandals, often at the expense of student safety. In the last episode, we dissected Andrew McGann's chilling path from teacher to double murderer. Now, here we are in 3. We're going to head to Texas for a case that exposes the dark underbelly of high school sports culture and administrative cover-ups. Meet Kip McFarlin, a football coach whose suggestive comments to teenage girls in 2005 led to a graceful exit from the district, only for him to land in another where he sexually assaulted a 16-year-old student. This isn't ancient history. His 2011 conviction and the lawsuits that followed helped spark Texas reforms, but it also showed how passing the trash persists in states where football reigns supreme. We trace his timeline, the ignored allegations, the victim stories, and how this case fits into a pattern of enablers. It's a story of power imbalances, institutional failures, and the long road to accountability. Let's dive in. Start by painting the picture of East Texas in the mid-2000s, where high school football isn't just a game, it's a religion. Think Friday Night Lights. Coaches often treated like local heroes. Kip McFarlin, then in his 30s, was a high school football coach at Orangefield Independent School District, a small community near the Louisiana border known for its tight-knit vibe and Bobcat pride. But in 2005, that image cracked when 6 female students came forward with complaints about his behavior. They accused him of using sexually suggestive language, making lewd remarks in class, and during practices, and telling one teenage girl that he'd date her if she wasn't a student. You know, like every 35 or whatever he is, his mid-30s says to a 17, 16-year-old high school student. These weren't isolated quips. Reports describe a pattern of inappropriate comments that made the girls feel uncomfortable and objectified, like joking about their appearances or implying romantic interest. Parents got involved. They saw something, they said something, alerted administrators. But the district's response was tepid at best. They investigated internally, but instead of reporting to authorities or revoking his credentials, they allowed what officials called a graceful exit. McFarlin resigned quietly, receiving a neutral recommendation letter that omitted any mention of the allegations. No police report, no red flag on his record, just a clean slate to move on. The decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It reflected the pressure that districts face. Firing a coach outright could invite lawsuits for defamation if the claims weren't proven beyond doubt. And in football-crazed Texas, rocking the boat might alienate boosters or the community. Unions often negotiate such deals, prioritizing member protection over transparency. So McFarlin walked away unscathed, his teaching certificate intact. And then fast forward to 2008. He lands a coaching job at Port Arthur Independent School District, about 20 miles away. 20 miles in the same region. Background checks? Well, they came up empty, because Orangefield hadn't documented or shared the complaints. For 3 years, he taught and coached without incident, or at least no one reported it. But in 2011, the other shoe dropped. McFarlin was accused of having S with a 16-year-old female student from his school. The relationship allegedly started with grooming, flirty text, special attention during class, and escalated to multiple encounters. The victim came forward, leading to his arrest on charges of SA of a child and improper relationships between educator and student. The trial revealed damning details. Prosecutors presented evidence of the assaults, including witness testimonies and communications that showed McFarlin abusing his position of authority. He was convicted in 2012, sentenced to 8 years in prison, and required to register as an offender for life. But the story didn't end there. The victim's family sued both districts in 2013 under the Trog v. Orangefield Independent School District, alleging negligence for passing the trash. They argued Orangefield's silence directly enabled the abuse at Port Arthur, putting their daughter in harm's way. The lawsuit highlighted how the neutral reference hid the 2005 complaints, allowing McFarlin to access new victims. While the exact settlement amount wasn't publicized, such cases often result in substantial payouts. Similar to the millions seen in other Texas abuse suits, Port Arthur faced scrutiny too for hiring him without digging deeper, though they claimed standard checks were followed, and they did. They followed the law. They did. It's not always the hiring school that is at fault. It's when they let them go, that they don't have the human decency or care for humanity to let the other school that they're giving a nice letter to that says, this guy is A-okay with us. I mean, just think of that for a second. If you knew that your neighbor had allegations against them for being inappropriate with kids, your own kids said to you, I don't know, he's saying weird stuff to me, it's not appropriate, and you're like, okay. Maybe it never reached the level of an SA directly, but the signs were certainly there that if given the rope, he'd hang himself with it. And then you decide to answer that tweet from a friend or Facebook post going, anybody know any good babysitters in the area? Want to go have a date night. Is there anybody that we could trust? And you go and say, I know someone. My neighbor. He's watched our kids a bunch of times, but you never tell them they're never going to watch your kids again. But your neighbor, it's been there. You know somebody. And then you recommend them to somebody else so that their children can hopefully survive the night. That's essentially what this is. Passed it off to their neighbor 20 miles down the road. You tell me there's not a human decency issue there and not just fear of repercussions. I get it. You got all that, but you didn't have to give the glowing recommendation or neutral recommendation. You didn't have to give any recommendation. You could have just stood silent. Wasn't he there? No. I can confirm the dates he was employed. Nothing else? Sorry. Read between the lines. McFarlin's case didn't happen in isolation. It's emblematic of Texas' long-standing issues with educator misconduct. The state has one of the highest rates of teacher-student S relationships in the country, with over 2,500 charges since 2017 alone. According to Texas Education Agency data, yet thousands more cases end in administrative separations, quiet resignations without charges or reports. A 2016 USA Today Network investigation, which featured McFarlin prominently, uncovered hundreds of similar instances nationwide where abusers hopped jobs after cover-ups in Texas. The probe revealed districts like Orangefield prioritizing reputation over safety, especially in sports programs where coaches wield outsized influence. Because, sports. Football and that culture amplifies as coaches are community pillars. You don't want to get rid of your good coach, even if they're, And allegations can disrupt seasons. We don't want to do that. funding or morale. Nobody wants to have to do any of these things. It's not like, oh, yay, let's get rid of the coach mid-season. And all these people who've been working their butts off now have like, what happened over here? Well, it's the coach's fault ultimately. And if you like it to not be the district's fault, you better get rid of him pretty freaking quick. One expert in the USA Today report noted it's easier to pass the problem than to solve it, echoing the incentives that led to McFarlin's shuffle. And on paper it is. There's less repercussions for the school, at least at first, until you get sued. But the odds of getting sued are pretty low, so they play those odds. Parents and victims in McFarlin's orbit have shared gut-wrenching stories. The 16-year-old from Port Arthur endured not just the abuse, but the trauma of testifying, then facing cross-examination that questioned her credibility, a common tactic in these cases. Her family described lasting effects, trust issues, anxiety, and disrupted education. Back in Orangefield, the 6 girls from 05 felt validated by the conviction, but frustrated that their warnings went unheard. One anonymous victim told reporters she felt dismissed when administrators downplayed her complaints as misunderstandings. The minimization is a hallmark of passing the trash. Districts label behaviors as poor judgment rather than potential grooming, avoiding mandatory reporting under Texas law, which requires flagging reasonable suspicions of abuse. The fallout extended beyond the courtroom. McFarlin served his sentence and was released on parole around 2020, but his case really did catalyze change. It now contributed to Texas Senate Bill 7 in 2017, which cracked down on educator-student relationships by expanding investigations, toughening penalties up to 20 years for felonies, and mandating disclosures of prior misconduct during hiring. Governor Greg Abbott signed it, calling it a step to protect our children from predators. Yet, as we saw in episode 2 with McGann, gaps remain. Texas passed another bill just in the last few weeks, as of this recording in 2025, to create a do not hire registry. So I'm going to applaud Texas here. There's a lot of problems that Texas had, and hopefully they are over the hill on this and are now on a path to preventing these from happening ever again. So good job, finally, Texas. Let's now follow through with these laws and rules. They do fill some of the gap, but again, it doesn't fix the problem nationwide. We're a nation of states. And the do not hire registry and all that, that's state. Go to another state. Doesn't necessarily apply. Doesn't necessarily have to be viewed. Doesn't necessarily have to be disclosed. And in some cases, legally can't be. But it is a step. There's a big set of land in Texas, as you may know. It's a big state. So having this there in place is certainly a step in the right direction. But something needs to happen nationally. McFarlin's story also fueled federal pushes. The Every Student Success Act, ESSA, amendments target such practices, but a 2022 Department of Education report found Texas among states with uneven enforcement. Compare this to similar cases in context. In Illinois, John White resigned amid allegations in 2005 with a glowing recommendation, only to assault 10 more kids in a nearby district, leading to fines for non-reporting in MINS and a Supreme Court ruling on liability. Or Gary Greger, who abused across Utah, Montana, and New Mexico with severances. Yes, they paid him to go. And neutral references, racking up victims before his 2022 convictions and $8 million settlements. McFarlin's football angle adds to a Texas twist, mirroring cases like a 2024 St. Helens, Oregon coach who abused after the cover-up. These patterns show how sports prestige shields predators, with unions and admins enabling shuffles to avoid disruption. Public reaction was swift and vocal. The 2016 USA Today series sparked outrage, with the editorials demanding schools report SA misconduct. Yes, it's crazy that anyone has to point this out and go, you got to do that, guys. And highlighting unions' roles and secretive details. On Twitter, there was a lot of threads from Texas parents decrying coach worship, sharing stats like 429 educators arrested for child S crimes in Texas from 14 to 18. One post read, "How many kids suffer because districts fear lawsuits more than abuse?" And that's a big question. Advocacy groups like Sesame amplified it, linking McFarlin to calls for banning NDAs in abuse settlements. In 2017, as the Senate debated reforms, victims testified, putting faces to the failures. We've covered extensive ground here, from McFarlin's suggestive remarks to the graceful exit to his conviction to lawsuits and Texas evolving laws, plus comparisons and public outcry. It underscores the passing of the trash. It isn't just negligence. It's a betrayal that ripples through our lives. In our next piece, in episode 4, we're going to explore Jason Fennis, a New Jersey teacher, known as the Lap of Danger. Can you imagine having that as your reputation around you, the lap of danger, that you're working with someone who has something called the lap of danger? We're going to get into it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And this only works. Reform only works. Change only works if people know there's a problem. And not everybody does. In fact, I would say most don't until it affects you directly. If you're a parent with kids in school, this should concern you. This should be right up at the top of your list. Because if the idea of sending your kids into a Catholic priest raises a red flag, this should too. Because it's pretty much the same thing that's been going on for years. Underreported, underinvestigated, and underexposed. Until now. Share this information. Share this video. It's an easy way of doing it. I'm not looking for clicks, but the information is there. Share articles. Share the information. I don't care how you do it, but we got a lot of content I'm here trying to make for you so you can get this message out there and we can start affecting change. So like it, share it, comment it. Let people know this is going on and things need to be fixed. Because just sitting back going, oh, well, they'll get to it. They'll do the right thing. They won't. They haven't been, and don't expect them to in the future. Unless the public pressure is there, and that is on you. Okay? So please do your part. Let us know your thoughts. Press subscribe. And we will talk again very, very soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.